All right, welcome back to another episode of the Card Crunchers podcast. As you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, we've got another guest today. We've got Avada Collectibles, aka Mudkip. So there was a few name changes there because Pokemon were banning Instagram accounts, and I think you've settled with Avada Collectibles now. Is that right?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Yeah, it's been,
Yeah, no worries. We're
been a bit of
very
a
excited.
whirlwind.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've both met you a few times in person, and obviously we've both known you on Instagram for a long time. So yeah, excited to chat to you today about the market, about collectibles, about TCGs. So first off, I want to ask actually both of you guys what you think about the new Japanese set which has just come out. Raging Surf is quite cheap compared to some of the previous Japanese sets that have released. So yeah, why do you think that might be? And is this potentially what's going to happen moving forward now? Have we got to the end of the Japanese booster box sealed hype?
I would kind of say there's kind of two things to that. So the prices must have come down because there's a lot of supply going around. If there wasn't enough supply, then prices would not have dropped. Secondly, I think popularity might have slightly dropped, but again, it's nothing crazy. So kind of with those two things, you're seeing like a new price for Raging Surf. Um, I watched some other YouTubers like Collect Pokemon that looks at like the PSA pop reports of Japanese booster boxes and so on. And you tend to see about 20 to 30,000 PSA graded cards for all the older sets like Dark Phantasma and all the ones like that. And with this one, I don't know if they're going to be pushing a lot more, but if that's the case, then there's going to be a lot more supply. I think just people generally are going to have fun just opening it. But yeah, I think anyone that's been frustrated with Japanese for like the last year are just going to have a great time now, especially with 151 reprinting, Visa Universe reprinting. It's just great time.
Do you think those reprints are helping, or maybe even the English 151 release has taken people sort of like awareness away from that, and they're too busy doing other things or getting those other sets?
So yeah, I don't think anyone in Japan cares about what the English set's doing, to be honest, and that's never been the case. I think other people have the opinion that because there's been an English reprint, oh, everyone's going to go and look at that and start opening that or whatever. But in terms of like dropping prices of 151 now, that's not due to 151 English printing and dropping now. It's because they've literally just printed more of it, and that's the reason you're seeing low prices. The demand's always going to be there. I mean, as you know, there's no master ball reverses in the English one.
Yeah.
That's a huge chase for a lot of people, you know. So yeah, there's no competition with Japanese for
Yeah, I
sure.
mean, I know this is a very a very vague question, but like if you had to speculate, how much, like what proportion of people buying Japanese do you think comes from Japan and people in Japan directly versus overseas? Like obviously
Uh,
it's a guess really, I know, but yeah, I'm just curious as to what you think that may be.
so just to clarify, do you mean so us guys say buying Japanese versus the
Yeah.
Japanese people buying Japanese?
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say it must have been probably like 95 or 90 Japanese, and now it may be like 85, 15, and then we're kind of 15. I think it hasn't been a massive difference, honestly. I mean, it must have been some difference, but honestly, it's still not huge. Like Japan, most people are buying in Japan, aren't they? So
Yeah.
it can't be. It's not going to be like 50-50 now, and it used to be 80% or something, you know. So I would say it's closer to that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think, as you said, the points you said make sense. I think the supply is starting to grow a lot more now. I think it's something we talked about before multiple times on the podcast, is that the supply needs to start coming up. Pokemon Japan are aware of the sheer demand of these products, and it's from a lot of the Japanese collectors that I follow on Instagram and Discord and Facebook groups, and that it does seem to be that they're now finding some of the previous sets a lot more readily available now in places like 7-Eleven. Obviously, it still sells out. Like if you're there after like midday, or for instance, you can't get the product. I know with the new set with Rage and Surf and that, even after like midday, a lot of the 7-Elevens, they are sold out still. So the demand is still there. I think the supply's just obviously got a lot better. Obviously, this set also brings in new mechanics. We've got like the ancient Pokemon and the future Pokemon. So I know this set has divided quite a lot of people, from what I've heard anyway, in terms of like whether they're going to be collecting this set. Obviously, the Salamence being a big card that people were looking for, and I think it kind of has, like when Battle Styles dropped, it obviously brings that new mechanic, and I think with this Japanese set, it's not going to be a set that everyone's going to be collecting, compared to like the previous set, and obviously 151, which everyone's going for. I think over probably the next 12 to 18 months, that supply will start to creep up a little bit, and they will reprint more sets. They're doing print to order now for multiple sets now, which is needed. And I think, as you said, the demand in Japan is still massive. It's grown over here, obviously, over the last 12 to 24 months, but it is definitely, from my experience when I was over there, I barely could find anything, and that was the actual stores selling out for people going in and buying packs for themselves, and that was in the book, even like the bookstores and stuff like that sell cards. They're just, the demand is just massive over there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next 18-24 months. I think obviously prices coming closer to retail now, 7,000 to 8,000 yen a box, is great for obviously collectors that want to be able to buy boxes that aren't like ridiculously expensive, and hopefully the prices will start to drop a little bit. Obviously, you said V-Star Universe just came out again. People were trying to sort of say that there's two sides of it really with this. There's the people that think the prices will constantly stay high because they're trying to sell their product for high prices, and there's also people that are trying to scaremonger people into selling up and saying, "Oh, these boxes are going to drop down to £40 a box again." I mean, from what I've seen, V-Star Universe is still £85 to £90 a box over here. I don't see it drop. It's never going to drop to like £40-50 a box. Let's be honest, because the demand is just, people will eat that up if it ever dropped to that low.
Yeah,
it would go in seconds because there's plenty of people that will buy at that price.
So something I do, or I have seen, is that the pop reports of V-Star Universe versus all the other sets is about 10x. Like
Really?
literally, you're seeing 260,000 cards graded from V-Star, especially because of PSA Japan now. Everyone in Japan wants to go and grade their gold Giratina or whatever it is. Like, so I think it's very possible that we do see like a £40 box, honestly. But
Yeah.
it's just, I don't know. It's kind of a weird one. It's like if it was only half as many that were really graded, you would have probably seen like 100 to 150 maybe, and on the same level as VMAX Climax. But now it's a weird one. I think it should be pretty low because there's just so much of it now. If you literally want a PSA 10 version of that card, you can pretty much buy it for cheap because the print quality is so good as well. It's just, there's just so much of it. I don't know where it's going to go. Like,
how much do you
sets.
think? Oh, sorry, go on.
Sorry, no, I finished my point.
Yeah, obviously you said it's like 10x in terms of pop report. How much of that pop
Genuinely,
report do you think comes from supply versus comes from because there's loads of cards in the set and people like collecting the set? Or
I think it just has a lot of cards that are gradable.
That's
my key thing with it, because there are just so many just nice cards in that set, and it makes it really easy for someone to just grade something and sell it immediately. Like if you look at the newer Scarlet Violet sets, you've literally got like Miriam and like maybe Miraidon alt in the first set, and then Paldea you've got like what, Tyranitar and Magikarp, and that's about it maybe. And then I don't know if there's one more, but and then with the Charizard set, which is terrible, it's basically Darkness Ablaze V2, but with slightly better art. that's got like 1 or 2 Charizards that might be gradable, and even then, it's not really a nice piece to really be displaying or anything like that. So, and to be honest, this year is just expected, really. As do you guys remember Sword and Shield Year One? It's just a 3-year cycle. Every single time you're going to see it. The next year, it's going to be back, and it's going to be great again.
Yeah.
We might have a set like Evolving Skies, EV Heroes again, and then tides will turn again. But yeah, it's just going to be like this, and Pokemon want it to be like this so that the player base can, get the staples and everything like that as well.
Yeah, it's. I think it's interesting to see how relative sealed box prices are in terms of like the graded cards, because I don't think it's really something we've talked about before, but it's conversations that I've had before in terms of comparing the pop reports and how cheap some of the cards in, because there are sets where there's nothing there's nothing above a certain price, but box prices are still extremely high because they're obviously quite rare, and there's even some modern sets where there's nothing in that set you can grade that's worth more than that box, and generally people won't always but open those boxes. But with obviously V-Star Universe, it has been printed to absolutely oblivion. It's always been there. I mean, I'll be interested to see if it does go down to £40 to £50 a box. I'll be interested to see if that happens. Honestly, I mean, I'll be happy with it because then I'll just buy a load of boxes. But I'd be interested to see if that does happen. I mean, again, and then the pop report could grow even more if that did happen.
I'm pretty sure when I last checked, it was about £49 on Amazon Japan, but don't quote me. That they might all be gone. So, so it is literally in that range now, where it's probably worth buying and holding or opening for fun or whatever. So,
yeah, I mean, it is a fun set. These holiday sets are always great to open, I think. Yeah, but I'll be interested to see what the pop report looks like long term, because if people are opening again, obviously PSA Japan has recently opened, and loads of people is just obviously flooding the market. When I was looking on the graded cards on like Macari and stuff like that and Yahoo auctions, the sheer amount compared to a couple of years ago of like graded cards in Japan is ridiculous. I mean, it's a great time if you're trying to buy up these cards because the market is saturated, and I guess that'll probably follow into another topic as well, which we talked about in the most recent episode in terms of are graded cards like saturated. Obviously, PSA is always the biggest grading company. BGS right now has a lot of issues. PSA does have a lot of issues, especially in the American branches, like the New Jersey site. Do you think we're at a point now where grading cards is so popular that it doesn't kind of matter what happens, people are still going to grade with these companies regardless?
So there's kind of, I would say, popularity of grading has definitely fallen. I don't think the prices that you were getting previously are anything what it used to be. But I think there is still some money to be made doing it, but it's definitely less. So I remember the story of the first time I actually graded, as did most people. I graded Darkness Ablaze Charizard, and I got it for about probably like £80. I graded it with graded gem for about £40, I think, so I could get it in the first 3 months or whatever it was. £10 shipping, whatever. It cost me 130 all in. What do you think that sold for as a PSA 10 at the time? It was mad. Yeah, honestly, guys, guess what would that have gone for around the boom?
I reckon.
Trying to think.
I reckon £250.
No, £350.
Oh,
and the thing is that in PSA 10 now is about £80.
yeah, I was gonna say it's not.
So
yeah,
it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So I think grading has definitely fallen by the wayside a bit. I think it also ties into popularity of Pokemon being pretty low generally because of how the Scarlet Violet sets have gone. And I think 151 has been good, but it's not like every set is 151 type level of hype or whatever. And yeah, I mean, I was literally looking the other day at a V-Star Universe Giratina Gold ultra rare, I think it is, PSA 10. And I think one sold for about 170 here. And then I looked on Mercari, and it was selling for about £40. And I was like, that 170 price is not going to stay there in a few months' time. That's going to be literally an £80 PSA 10, if that. You're literally not making any money grading now, which is terrible for me because I've been grading less recently. But it's just the way the market goes, and I think sealed will win in the end. Sealed will always overtake grading, at least at this moment. But things can change.
Yeah, I think it's always something. When I started grading cards, I always remember I had a few graded cards like before 2019, but it was only sort of after that when I started going, right, I'm just gonna, because I looked into it before, but like for some reason I just kind of never did it. I had like 3 graded cards, and then obviously the boom happened, and I think it was always the goal of a lot of people was to, if you can grade it, send a submission in, sell a few cards, make your money back, and the rest of the cards have been graded free, right? But I'd say my last 2 to 3 submissions, that's been very difficult to achieve, and I've had to start thinking of other ways to kind of make that happen in terms of like, so now I've started grading cards trading cards that I've been graded into sealed products, not just a Pokemon but other card games, to make it a bit more liquid, because sealed is always just so much easier to sell because people always want to take those chances to open and stuff. But I definitely think Pokemon's probably at a low point. But I think a lot of people I see posts on some of the Facebook groups, and there's a group specifically I'm in that the guy's very emotionally reactive to anything that happens. He does actually know what he's talking about, and he's very informative, but he is very emotionally reactive. And one small thing happens, and it's like the end of the world. And right now, he's claiming that Pokemon's dead and it will never be popular again, and people should sell up, and he's not touching it again. And obviously, we go through these cycles, as you said. But with Sword and Shield, we went through a cycle. The first couple of sets with every generation aren't always the strongest. They bring in new mechanics, it gets better, and then by the end of it, everyone's loving it. And that happens. And I think people just need to be, I guess, patient, really, honestly, and just understanding that everything can't be absolutely mental all the time. And grading got saturated because nobody was, only certain people were grading, and then everyone was suddenly grading. We had a million grading companies. People were grading, reverse hollow Poliwhirls from whatever set, and they were getting PSA 9 back, and or standard Vs, for instance. They were grading standard Vs and expecting to make loads of money back. And sealed is always, for me, seal's always been the best return of investment when you're looking at these. Grading has the potential of, it's a bit more high risk, high reward sort of thing, of like, you can get a card back at 10 and it can, for whatever reason, be worth so much money. Obviously, you've been grading a lot yourself recently, so that obviously, when you moved into terms of like, because are you set up fully as a business now?
Yeah, so I've kind of set up as a business as Avada Collectibles now, which has been a fun process, as I think Jamie, as well. Yeah, so that transition kind of came about because I was kind of doing a little bit and then a little bit more, and then it just got to the point where I was like, actually, you know what, it makes sense to just do this as a business. And so far it's been okay. I haven't got anything back just yet, and I've got some stuff to send off. But yeah, these prices aren't looking too good. It doesn't bode well for the business, I guess. But you just live and learn. Like, yeah, I'm still grading. Literally, was it yesterday? Yes, literally yesterday. I sent off about 19 enchanted rare Lorcana cards.
Nice.
We'll talk about Lorcana later, but those cards, they're 1 per case, so you would literally have to open about 80 booster boxes to get that many cards of that much, and it did cost a lot. But if you look at the arbitrage of selling those as 10, I'm a very analytical, mathsy type of person. I literally just look into the maths. What's percentage grading? If there's a 70% chance of this happening, then you're going to get this or whatever. And you have to do a lot of risk management. And it just makes a lot of sense to just do it. And the downside risk is you lose your time and a tiny amount of
Yeah.
money because I'm sure you'll still sell everything as 9s or something like that, right? So that's kind of where it comes into um, sealed versus graded, because graded you can do very fast. You can do it within 3 months, maybe faster depending on what the card is. If it's straight out from, if you got Raging Surf, you got one of the, I don't know, the Garchomp SAR or whatever it is, grade it within the first month. I think you'll just make money because people want the first one. I don't know why. I wish I had a reason for why people want to buy the first one or whatever it is. I don't know if there's like a reason as, oh, I've got the oldest cert one, so that's like the first one kind of thing, or I don't really know the reason, but there's always that hype at the beginning, and it just works for whatever reason until it doesn't. But for now, it does. So
Yeah, I mean, it's the
one of
same
those
as the
things.
Royals, right? Every new set that comes out, the Royals, generally speaking, are most expensive that first week, that first day, even. Yeah,
Yeah,
they might, over time, and they might have their ups and downs, but generally speaking, they come out and they're big expensive, and then a few weeks pass and they drop in price if the supply's there. If there's enough there to keep getting opened over those weeks. But yeah, despite that, people continue to buy on release day the higher the higher price. I think it's purely just down to, I don't know, maybe it's just like, oh, it might be, maybe I've paid £20 more, but I get it right now when I want it, when it's more exciting, when there's hype, when I think people just don't care about paying that difference. That there's some people out there that just would pay the extra to get it as soon as possible, but it's kind of weird because it has been. I feel like everyone's spoken about this for years, and it's just still like everyone still
still,
does it. There's always someone like willing to buy the first one. It's mad. In
yeah.
terms,
I honestly don't. I don't know if it's someone shilling it as well, because we had that a lot until I remember there being a time where basically Brilliant Stars came out. Actually, Jamie, I spoke to you about this once, where we had the Charizard. Do you remember the old type Charizard, the one with the Venusaur against the Charizard?
Yeah.
That card. So that card, I thought was a sick card. That card should have been first one sold. Should have been like 1,500, something like that. And it just wasn't. And that was the first time I think that really happened. The last time a card really had that treatment was maybe the Giratina V. And I think whoever was shilling these before for thousands or like hundreds is just gone. And for whatever reason, it's just come down a lot more than, in recent times or whatever. And this is why you're seeing the more recent cards since the Charizard. I would say Lugia V, weirdly, the old art's also in that same boat of it not being as high as the other ones previously. Like, for instance, would you rather have a Leafeon V Max PSA 10 or that Lugia V old art PSA 10? I would rather have Lugia, but for some reason
Yeah.
people really like the Leafeon one or the Glaceon one or whatever. But that Lugia should be in the same tier as, the Garchomp, um, the not the Garchomp, the Giratina, and maybe even on Umbreon's level, it'd be kind of close at least. But something's happened at that point. I realized something happened at that point. These cards are not grading for as much as they used to, uh, but there's still money in it, which is why we're all here today. So
Of course.
it's
Yeah.
just one of those things.
Yeah. It's yeah. I'm just interested to see. I like seeing things happen as they happen. I know you're obviously a numbers guy. And I think the reason why we're all here right now is because we like looking into the numbers and we like understanding or not understanding how markets work. Because sometimes there isn't an answer to or rhyme or reason for anything. But yeah, I think when stuff first comes out, like we know that the likelihood is these cards are gonna drop, but there's that still inkling in our back of our head where we're like, "Oh, but what if it goes up?" And I guess that FOMO always wins, and it's always like, well, let's just buy it. I mean, with 151, I looked at the prices, and I was quite surprised that it's not all as much as I thought it would be. Maybe I think it was just because I was comparing it to Japanese, and obviously that's we shouldn't do that because Japanese is a very different thing. But um, this English set, I know the Charizard is the most expensive, but that Erica, I mean, even the gold Mew, you know, people were selling it for like 20 quid on release day, and like that just seems, that's mad. That for me, that looks that there's very little value in this. The 151 set looks great to open, and I know we've had some issues here where you can open up a whole case of ETBs and you only get 1 EX per ETB, and that's the best hits. Or you can open up 2 ETBs and have like the whole Blastoise, Venusaur, Charizard line and an Erica. So there's definitely some. It's definitely a bit weird with the pull rates, but do you think there's a lot of value in grading 151 now? Because obviously you grade so much now. Will you be grading a lot of English 151?
No.
No.
So the reason being, I have not been convinced by the print quality that there'd be any 10s, honestly. So honestly, why would I spend a few £100 buying these if none of them are going to make 10s and you don't have the chance of that premium? I actually think, weirdly, the better play, although it depends on how much 151 is printed, is to buy these PSA 10s at really low prices and waiting. But I don't think I'm going to touch that set for at least a year and then really see what happens, because it doesn't really make any sense. Like, firstly, the prices of these 10s are kind of going to be the highest at this point, and they'll come down in the next few months. And by the time I would, have them out, they're not going to be worth as much anyway. So there's a very high risk and very low reward, basically, is what it comes down to. And yeah, I wouldn't touch it. I would rather go for the 151 Japanese, maybe V-Star, but obviously I'm not very convinced with the amount that's been printed, or maybe go for older sets with old arts or something like that. Or just stick to Lorcana. Lorcana's been pretty good, so that's just the way that.
Weirdly enough, 151 with its release actually got me thinking about Hidden Fates, because I feel like when Hidden Fates came out, loads of people were collecting it. It has loads of Gen 1 Pokemon, and a lot of people like collected and graded it and were like, long term, like this is going to be a really popular set. I don't see it anywhere. Like, I don't see anyone posting Hidden Fates cards, but they're nice. Like, it was a nice set. Yeah. They were nice cards, and yeah, I find it interesting that it's kind of like has similarities to 151, but yeah, no one seems to. I mean, I guess that's kind of Pokemon at the moment. The focus is modern, like current modern, right? So 151, everyone's on it. What I know you said, like maybe within a year you'd pick it up. Like, what would have to happen for you to be like, I want to get some 151? What are you looking at for?
So there's going to be certain things I'm going to be looking at. So I think for it to be worth my time, because I'm not doing this full time. I have a full time job as a data scientist. So it's obviously data, but I'd have to look at cards that are at least kind of like a minimum of £50 to buy raw. Like, that's the first minimum kind of thing I have to look at, because then it's not really worth my time to just buy like one of these art rares or lower tier cards. Firstly, secondly, I have to look at what the PSA 10 rate is. So usually, I think way back around the Evolving Skies kind of time, we were looking at around 80% would get 10. Now, because of whatever changes PSA have made, which we're not really sure of, we're now looking at about 60 to 70% making 10s. If that, maybe, I don't know. So if it's at 60, 70, it might still be okay. And then the third thing you still have to see is how much is the 10 selling for, because at that point, you're not really going to expect it to go lower. You might think, oh, everyone's like onto this new set. Maybe it's been a terrible set, whatever. Oh, I'll pick up an old set. 151 might start to pick up again, kind of thing. So those are kind of like the three main things. So I'd be looking at the Charizard EX SAR, the Mew EX SAR, those two, and then the Erica I call them SAR because it's Japanese, but it's the SIR, isn't it, for English? So those three are kind of the main ones I've been targeting for Japanese. It'll probably be the same case for English in a year's time. There's no point touching it now. It's just too risky. Like,
yeah, it makes sense. obviously you did touch on Lorcana, so Jamie, I think you had
Yeah.
wanted to ask some Lorcana questions there.
Yeah. So obviously we've spoken about Lorcana, and it is exciting. I think we've all three of us have opened Lorcana. We all have our opinions on it. So I know you've, as you just mentioned, you've invested, well into Lorcana. We know the player base is doing extremely well from what I've heard. Everyone seems to be really enjoying it. It seems to be like a fresh approach, and a lot of people I know are not dropping, but they're a lot of people that play Pokemon I know are kind of not playing Pokemon as much now because they're putting a lot of time into Lorcana. How is the collector space going, and where do you see Lorcana going in over the next sort of 5 years?
So I can't say as much on collecting because I also play as well. So I'll touch on both actually. So collecting. Um, so let me just talk about my first experience in Lorcana and why I've kind of gone into that. So I remember it was probably about a year ago. We had the first D23 promos come out. So it was a set of six. So you had, I think, Elsa, Stitch. I'm not going to try and remember all of them right now, but there was basically a set of six, and they were selling at the D23 Expo for, I want to say, 1,500 maybe. And that was, still out of reach for me. Even at that point, I was like, "That's ridiculous." You get six cards in it, it's great, but the way it was packaged and stuff, I was like, nah, in terms of grading, it's maybe not the best, whatever. So they released also another card, a Mickey card. So there was the Mickey, I think it's called the Brave Little Tailor, BLT. And I bought two of those because I was like, you know what? There's a chance that Lorcana's really big. We're not really going to be talking about it right now. It's literally the first cards that come out. Think about the first ever cards that have come out for Pokemon, how rare they are now, all those kinds of things. I remember putting it on my Instagram story and going, if you were to buy a Charizard and you knew there were only 3,000 of these released, what would you pay? And like the answers ranged from like 50p to like 10 grand, 100 grand, whatever it was. And I was like, I think buying these for about 300 each makes some sense, to be honest. So I bought two of these, 300 each, and I was like, okay, this might be something. This could be something like whatever. And I think I just kept it over time, and I was like, okay, I'll just go grade it. I was lucky enough to get 110 and 19, which was expected because I did see a little bit of whitening on the 9, whatever. And I was like, yeah, okay, cool. And then I looked at the prices for these 10s and 9s, and I was like, shocked that these have gone up. Well, not really shocked. I was like, I kind of expected it, but they went up into the thousands. I think the PSA 10's about $3,000 to $3,500, and I think the 9 fluctuates somewhere between $1,000 and $1,500. I had to pay a little bit of an upcharge for it and so on, but overall, I probably paid £700-800 for both of them, and they've gone up massively. And the reasoning was, it's Lorcana, it's Disney. You always see these graphs of the most popular IP, and it's like Pokemon's number one, and then this Disney, and then Disney. If you add up the little ones together, and it overtakes Pokemon, and you're going, okay, well, I haven't really thought about Disney really. So for that reason, Disney is a huge IP. Everyone watches it. I've got little baby cousins that watch Disney now. I remember watching like Lion King, Mowgli was a huge one for me, and like all these kinds of things, right? Everyone knows Disney, everyone knows Pokemon, but I think more people know Disney, especially, I don't know, I think more people do know Disney than Pokemon maybe. And I think that's been kind of the main reason I was like, Disney is going to be huge. And now we've seen Lorcana come out, and they haven't printed as much as they should have done, which hasn't been great for the players. But as you can see, the prices are ridiculous for some of the cards, like the Elsa Enchanted Lorcana PSA 10, that goes for about $2,000, $2,500, and it's a set card. I mean, I know it's like one per case, but again, there's 12 of them released, so it comes out to about 1 in 1,100 chance of pulling it in a pack. So if you look at that compared to a Pokemon pull rate, I think the pull rate's on with 151 English for about 1 in 200 for some of the top cards. So this is 5 times rarer than that. You have to take that into consideration, and with it being less supply, some of the prices kind of make sense in the same, if you line up Pokemon and Disney in the same way. So that's been good. But yeah, so in terms of the collector space, if someone was to target it now, I would suggest there's a few cards to really look out for, which I've also been buying. Which is there's been two promos that have come out. One is the Goofy Gamescom promo. Gamescom is a expo in Germany for all the new video games that come out, basically. And it's fairly cheap. It's pretty good, and I think if Lorcana grows long term, that's a good one. And there's another one. Oh, I can't remember what it's called. I think it's like a Mickey detective card. I think it came out. It's somewhere in the US. I can't remember the name of the expo now. Someone will know down in the comments what it was. But yeah, I would pick up both of those. And the third thing, there's a sort of like a set of 3 league promos that have come out. So if you go to a local tournament in the US, I haven't really seen it in the UK, but I'm sure they give them out as well. If you win them, there's 3 there. So there's another Mickey there. I think it's the same as the one at the expo. I could be wrong. Oh no, that's a must. That's it. So I'm rambling, but the one in the US is I think a Mickey Musketeer, and the Mickey Detective is the league promo one. So I would also target that one as it's a Mickey card. In terms of future cards, I don't really know what's coming out aside from set 2, which should be really good. It'll be worth picking up whatever you can find on the street for Lorcana. Like is worth buying, honestly, because you can get the starter decks. You get 1 pack in them. You get to play the game, and let me just talk about the game itself is amazing. Like I've been playing. I don't know if you guys have ever played Hearthstone or any other TCGs. So
I've
Hearthstone,
heard.
yeah. So Hearthstone was one made by the same guys that made WoW, Blizzard, etc. Right, and it ran hugely popular. It's popular now for different reasons, but it's been going for 10 years. It was a hugely popular game when it came out, and Disney gives me the same kind of feel factor it did with Hearthstone. I can't describe it in a like any other way, but me playing that game, it feels like Hearthstone and Magic made a baby, and it was Lorcana, and you gave it Lorcana as in Disney IP. It's kind of like a winning formula. So I think people that actually play the game, they are really enjoying it as well. They've seen they what's the word? So yeah, when you play the game, you're going to see lots of ranges of different decks. It's not Pokemon where one deck is just really good, and you play one card, you get to look through your whole deck and find the card you want, and then play it. And then I just hate that. I don't like that about Pokemon. But
Searching.
the way that Lorcana does it, yeah, it's way better with how Lorcana does it. The resource management is really good. You know how you have like land cards in Magic? They make it so that you can ink your cards. So like say 80% of your deck is inkable, you can use any of your cards as a land kind of thing. And it's really good because the resource management is really good in that sense. So I can only see the player base really growing, but there needs to be more product. And we're not really going to see more product until January, or basically they said Q1 2024 for the reprint of the first set. And once we see that, and once people get some more cards, I think it'll be a good time. In terms of longer term, I don't know how far it can go. It just depends on set to set. I mean, I think there was a TCG kind of recently that had I think 3 or 4 sets, and then it kind of died down. It might be MetaZoo actually, but so hopefully that doesn't happen with Lorcana. But I think it'll be good. Yeah, I really enjoy it. I've been really enjoying playing with my wife. I've played with a few other people. I've played. There's like an unofficial client. It's just fantastic. Honestly, the game's really good, and everyone should give it a go. Honestly, it's so good.
Yeah, I
So
think
that's my.
that's what
Sorry, I was going to say
that's
that's
what
my
I've
spiel
heard.
on Lorcana
Yeah,
now. So I'm done.
that's what I've heard from a lot of people. Is like, a lot of the players. I've heard zero faults about the playability of the game, which is obviously a factor that is absolutely massive in terms of games, and not always something we always talk about. But I think having moved into the last 12 months of kind of trying to keep in touch with the player bases of the games that I've been selling cards to. I mean, I sold out of all my Lorcana cards on card market when I listed them. I only opened up like 5 packs, but the cards went like really quickly. I know, Mike, that you opened some packs. I think you listed some Lorcana cards on card market. So what's your what's your feelings on it, Mike? Then we'll go for all of us.
Obviously, I can't comment on playability. I can only comment on like opening the cards and what the cards look like. Yeah, was it? I mean, it was strange to see that I could open 2 packs and profit from it, despite not really pulling anything like it that looked any good or special. But I guess that just comes down to like what you said, with there's just not enough product out there for the players. Because yeah, it's players that are buying these cards off me on Card Market. It was literally 2 packs. In terms of just collecting it, I didn't like it personally. I thought the art and just, I mean, there was no texture, and I just really love texture. I mean, it would be different if I probably packed something, but personally, like, I'm not gonna buy any more myself. Like, I don't think I'm gonna go down the Lorcana TCG route. But yeah, I mean, it is Disney. Like, so I think what you said earlier is that Disney is kind of a more, like, Pokemon's well known, let's be honest, we know that, but like Disney's more the average person. I think it connects to the average person more than Pokemon would. Pokemon connect to us normally because of childhood, right? But you know, I mean, Disney's the same. It's normally childhood, but I feel like as you grow, as you get older, you still kind of watch Disney films, and you're still happy to watch them, and they are always like very emotionally involved, right? But obviously, it's a trading card game, so then I feel like that breaks it down further. You're only appealing to a certain amount of people. Although the IP is for everyone, I don't know if the trading cards are, because some people just don't care about cards. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see where it goes. I wasn't overly impressed with it. I guess that's what I've got to say.
Yeah, I think my feelings are always very conflicted, especially at the moment with card games, because personally, like myself, see it as, I mean, I love Disney, and I was excited to see the game come out. I think some of the cards look nice, but the texture thing that you mentioned on, obviously going from games where, I mean, at the moment I've been heavily collecting One Piece, and there's like a lot of texture in those cards, and the cards look great as well. But I think the other side of it as well is I probably will end up getting Lorcana, probably for the business to sell. I think it makes sense. It's a hot IP. Also, where there's a growing player base, as a single seller, it just makes sense to have singles to sell, because they sell really well. I think one of the ones that I was sort of talking to was a store in America, and they crack a lot of packs and stuff to sell singles, like in the store and that. And he was saying that he just couldn't open enough. Like he had a pretty good supply from, I don't know where he got all the supply from, but he had a pretty good supply of sealed and that. But most of the people in his store were buying singles versus sealed after the first like release weekend or two. And he was saying he was cracking stuff, and every single, people were obviously, I guess he was giving the bulk away and then selling the higher value singles or whatever. But it's definitely as a purely business side of it, I probably will get involved with it because it will make money selling singles. Now, whether that'll be the same case when supply comes up, because I know, I mean, the supply for Flesh and Blood is good, but I still sell, hundreds of thousands of Flesh and Blood cards. The same as Magic, the supply is good there, but the player base is so big that singles are selling. So that'll be another trade-off to see when the supply is really good with Lorcana, which hopefully it does happen soon. If the player base keeps growing, then it will definitely be worth doing. But yeah, there's that kind of like, there's that middle ground of it being popular enough, but supply being enough, if that makes sense. That obviously they'll have to get right, but it is their first set, so.
Yeah, I will just also add that another reason, I guess, that I started playing was because I wanted to see if there was a way of really knowing what cards could be popular. later on down the line, because I know that set 2 is coming down, and there might be certain cards that aren't great right now, but with the synergies that might be with set 2, it might be part of the staple deck. And a card that might be £4 or whatever could be 15 to 20, and if you have multiple copies of that, it's a no-brainer. So if you play the game, you'll have that knowledge of what could be good further down the line as well. So it's kind of, I liked that I was able to do that sort of thing. So there's nothing that sort of thing just yet, but I have that option of playing kind of competitively and going, okay, this card's really good, or this card's not good yet, but if this had more types of these cards come in, it could also be good, and maybe it's worth buying a full set or whatever it is, selling it down the line, whatever it is, So things like that happen, like in Magic or whatever. There's cards that are worth very little. Something comes up, and then it's worth a lot more than it used to be. So it's just another type of business, I guess. Another way of looking at the business, I guess, as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much what I did with Flesh and Blood, to be honest. I wanted to understand the meta, because with Flesh and Blood, you have heroes, and some heroes are better than others. New sets come out, they'll support different heroes. Like, there'll be a card that comes out in the next set that's supporting cards from the very second Flesh and Blood set. And now I'm starting to sell loads of mech cards because a new dash has been released and things like that. And that was a massive confidence boost for me in terms of like collecting Flesh and Blood, that it's not a meta, like it's not a rotation. I'm not a big fan of. There's a really hard way of doing it because Yu-Gi-Oh kind of has power creep, whereas with Flesh and Blood, they have once a hero earns enough XP at big tournaments, it becomes living legend status. So now it can't be played in competitive play. So it kind of means once something gets too overpowered, it's like, cool, you can't play it anymore. And then people are like, right, well, what other hero am I going to play? Well, let me try this hero. And so there's a constant of like, I've got cards. I mean, Mike's pretty well, I suppose, but most people are aware now. But Mike's definitely aware of. I basically bulk bought everything from the first 5 sets, knowing that at some point in the next 10 years, if Flesh and Blood is still going, which I hope it is, I'm not 100% sure it will be, but I hope it is, that there could be cards that are like 50p Majestics that are worth, they're worth 50p now, but you only get 4 Majestics per box, and boxes are 200 quid. So why is that card so cheap? Because it's not playable, and Flesh and Blood is 90% player base now, whereas when I joined, there was a lot of players, but it was all collectors, investors, and it was always, it was that stonks making money. And once that stopped and people realised that actually this is a highly competitive game, but the downside to Flesh and Blood that I suppose like card games like One Piece or Lorcana and Pokemon don't have is the entry point to Flesh and Blood is extremely high. Like, you can't just build a competitive deck for 50 quid like Pokemon. With Flesh and Blood, you need to drop at least 500 quid to have any chance at doing well. Just because the legendaries are so expensive. Like the Tunic but that's why they're starting to reprint stuff as well. So that's a whole other topic. But I think understanding how the game works and the mechanics of it is an extremely intelligent move to make if you're wanting to invest and collect a game. Because not only will you have fun anyway, because you get to play as well. Like, it's another way of appreciating the game as well. But that knowledge that you're going to have with Lorcana, and I think maybe not that many people, especially in the UK, aren't doing that with Lorcana. I've not heard anyone really I don't hear a lot of people talking about investing and collecting Lorcana in the UK. I talk about a lot of people playing it, but that'll be for benefit for you, right? If the game continues to grow, which it probably will do. The only thing that will stop Lorcana, in my opinion, is Ravensburger. Like, if they decide down the line that, if they drop it, because Disney's a big IP, but, this is their first proper card game. If they decide to drop it down the line because they just don't want to do it. But I mean, yeah, it seems to be a hit, and regardless of my opinion in terms of like wanting to collect it, I'm excited to see kind of what happens, especially with those promos as well. I think I did pick up a couple of those goofy promos in a trade just because it was someone in Europe had a load of copies and stuff. But it's exciting to see what happens anyway with Lorcana.
Cool. I think we're done here. Unless you had any other questions, Jamie.
Yeah. No. I want to end on a hot take. We always like to end on a hot take. So, regardless of what TCG it is, it can be any card game or whatever. What is a hot take of yours?
So I thought about this before coming on actually. So I kind of have two. So one is I think people need to give Lorcana the game a go, and I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but it's so much fun. Honestly, I'm loving it. And the second thing is a bit more unrelated. You know when you get a PSA graded card and you want to go regrade it, and the grade changes, you shouldn't pay because it changed grade. Do you know what I mean? So if it's a 7 and it regrades to an 8, why are we paying PSA? They got it wrong. They should own up. You know, like probably people will agree with me. So it's not really a hot take, but I don't know.
It's an underrated take.
Yeah, it's an underrated take. Like, why are we paying PSA? They've got it wrong. They should fix it, you know? Or any grading company.
Yeah. You're getting it reassessed, and they're going, "Oh yeah, we were wrong." So it's like, what?
Yeah. So when are we getting the pitchforks out, guys?
I think
that's a good one, actually.
That happens a lot of BGS, especially with their Black Label premium. The amount of people that send 10s in again and again and again to get that Black Label.
Yeah. It needs to be. I think. Sorry, I was going to say, it needs to be more of a science like grading, because at the moment, it's just someone looks at it for 10, 15 seconds or whatever and goes, it's a 9, it's 10, whatever, and chucks it. And then, like, there needs to be more automation, more science, more, forensics, I guess, to actually know what the grade of a card is. It doesn't make sense. I obviously do it because it makes money, but, like, it doesn't really make sense, honestly. On a fundamental level, it doesn't make sense, I would say.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast, as always. It's great to have guests on, and this episode was a really good one for sure. But yeah, thank you everyone for watching. Please check out all the socials. All the links in the description will be below for the YouTube, obviously, Vada Collectibles as well, the Instagram page, and then our Spotify as well, which you can listen to. But thank you very much.
Thanks for having me on.